The morning sun cast long shadows across the New Seoul colony as Commander Park Hyun-woo walked through the main agricultural dome. The air smelled of fresh earth and growing plants. Children's laughter echoed from the school playground nearby, where his 12-year-old daughter So-young was playing with her classmates before morning lessons began. Hyun-woo smiled as he watched So-young chase her best friend, Kim Taemin, around the climbing frame. The boy was 2 years older and faster, but So-young was clever. She always found ways to catch him. It was a peaceful morning on their frontier world, just like hundreds of mornings before. The colony had been their home for 5 years now. When they first arrived on Kepler 4 for 2B, it was nothing but red dirt and strange purple grass. Now they had farms, schools, shops, and over 3,000 people calling it home. The dome protected them from the planet's thin atmosphere while letting in the golden light from the system's twin suns. Hyun-woo checked his morning reports on his tablet. Crop yields were good. The water recycling systems were running perfectly. The weather satellite showed clear skies for the next week. Everything was normal and quiet, exactly how he liked it. That changed in an instant. The colony's warning sirens began to wail. Hyun-woo looked up from his tablet to see massive shadows falling across the dome. Ships were descending from the sky, but they were not human ships. These vessels were dark and angular, with strange red lights pulsing along their hulls. They moved in perfect formation, at least 20 of them, each one larger than the colony's biggest transport. All civilians report to emergency shelters immediately. Hyun-woo's voice boomed across the colony's speaker system. His training kicked in as he ran toward the command center. This is not a drill. Repeat, all civilians to emergency shelters. Now, but even as he spoke, he knew they were too late. Bright blue beams shot down from the alien ships. The beams passed harmlessly through the dome's protective barrier, as if it was not even there. Where the light touched the ground, people simply vanished. Not destroyed, not hurt, but gone. Lifted up into the ships above, like they weighed nothing at all. Hyun-woo's blood turned cold as he realized what was happening. The aliens were not attacking random people, they were choosing specific targets. The blue beams were only touching the smallest humans they could find. They were taking the children. So-young, he whispered, then broke into a desperate run toward the playground. The schoolyard was chaos. Teachers were trying to gather their students, but the blue beams were everywhere. Children were disappearing one by one, lifted into the air by forces beyond human understanding. Some of the kids were crying. Others were too shocked to make any sound at all. Hyun-woo saw his daughter standing near the swings, holding hands with Taemin and 2 younger children. So-young was not crying. Instead, she was looking up at the ships with the same determined expression she wore when solving difficult math problems. "Dad," she called out when she saw him running toward her. There was no fear in her voice, only calm acceptance. "I think they want us." "No," Hyun-woo shouted, pushing past panicking adults and fallen playground equipment. "So-young, run. Get to the emergency shelter." But the blue beam found her first. So-young looked directly at her father as the light surrounded her and her 3 friends. She did not scream or struggle. Instead, she raised her hand and waved goodbye, as if she was going on a school trip instead of being kidnapped by aliens. "I love you, Dad," she said. Her voice somehow carried clearly over all the noise and confusion. "Don't worry about me. I'll be okay." Then she was gone, lifted up through the dome and into the belly of the nearest ship. Hyun-woo fell to his knees. In the empty playground, around him, parents were screaming and crying as they watched their children disappear. Teachers stood in stunned silence, staring at empty classrooms. The beams continued for another 10 minutes, methodically taking every human under the age of 16 they could find. When it was over, 37 children were missing from New Seoul Colony. The alien ships hovered in the sky for a moment longer. Then a new sound filled the air. It was not the whine of their engines or the hum of their transport beams. It was a voice, speaking in perfect human language through every speaker in the colony. Humans of the settlement called New Seoul. The voice was deep and harsh, like rocks grinding together. "I am war leader Thorzak of the Vorthok Empire. Your young are now property of our state. This is how things will proceed." Hyun-woo climbed to his feet, his hands shaking with rage as he listened. "Your species will submit to Vorthok rule. You will provide tribute of food, materials, and workers. Your armies will disband. Your governments will serve our interests. Do this, and your offspring will be treated well as servants in our empire." The voice paused, letting the words sink in. "Refuse our generous offer, and your young will suffer. You have 7 of your days to signal your complete surrender. Any act of resistance will result in immediate punishment of the children. Any attempt to follow our ships will result in their deaths. You are weak, as all species are weak. Accept this truth, and your young may live to serve a greater purpose." The transmission ended. The alien ships began to rise, preparing to leave the system. Hyun-woo looked around at the other parents, at the teachers, at the farmers and engineers and shop owners who made up their small community. He saw the same expression on every face. It was not the broken despair the aliens expected. It It was not the helpless acceptance they demanded. It was cold, focused anger. Mrs. Kim, Taemin's mother, spoke first. Her voice was quiet but steady. They think we'll just give up because they took our babies. They don't know humans very well, said Teacher Lee, who had lost 6 students from her class. Hyunwoo activated his emergency communicator, sending a priority message to Earth and every human colony in known space. The message was simple, but it would change everything. This is New Seoul Colony. Hostile aliens have abducted 37 human children. They demand our surrender. We are not surrendering, we are declaring war. Send help. Send everyone. As the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying away the children of New Seoul, they left behind something they had never encountered before in their long history of conquest. They left behind humans who had nothing left to lose, and everything to fight for. The war leader, Thorzak, believed he had just won an easy victory over another weak species. In 7 days he expected to receive a message of complete surrender from the humans. Instead, he had just made the worst mistake. In the history of his empire, he had threatened human children. Now the real war would begin. The emergency message from New Seoul Colony reached Earth 18 hours after the abduction. Admiral Lee Chang-ho was eating breakfast with his wife when his secure communicator started beeping with the highest priority alert code. As he read the message, his coffee cup slipped from his hands and shattered on the kitchen floor. 37 children, he whispered, reading the words again to make sure he understood correctly. They took 37 human children. His wife looked at the broken cup, then at her husband's face. She had been married to a military man for 25 years. She knew that expression. It meant war. Within 2 hours, Chang-ho was standing in the emergency meeting room of the Terran Defense Council in Geneva. The massive screen at the front of the room showed a map of human space, with New Seoul Colony marked in red. Around the table sat the most powerful people in human civilization, military commanders, government leaders, and colony representatives. Tell me everything, Chang-ho said to the intelligence officer who had prepared the briefing. Lieutenant Colonel Yoon Mira stood up and activated the holographic display. Images of the alien ships appeared in the air above the table. The attackers call themselves the Vorthok Empire. Our long-range sensors track their ships heading toward the Rigel sector. Based on the transmission they sent, they appear to be a militant species that conquers other races. What do we know about their tactics? Asked General Park from the Mars Defense Force. They target children, Mira replied, her voice tight with controlled anger. According to our xenology databases, this is how they break the will of other species. They take the young, demand surrender, and then use the children as leverage to control the population. Chang-ho studied the alien ship designs. They were clearly built for war, with heavy armor and massive weapon systems. How many ships do they have? Unknown, sir, but based on the size of their empire, we estimate at least 10,000 vessels, maybe more. The room fell silent. The entire human fleet had fewer than 3,000 ships, and most of those were explorers or cargo haulers, not warships. So they outnumber us, Chang-ho said quietly. They have better technology. They have our children as hostages. He looked around the table at the grim faces. Anyone want to tell me why we should not surrender? Defense Minister Kim Jae-won spoke up. Admiral, with respect, we have to consider the children's safety. If we attack, they might hurt them. They already hurt them, Chang-ho replied. The moment they took those kids away from their parents, they hurt them. The question is, do we let them get away with it? Dr. Yoon Mira cleared her throat. Sir, there is something else. We have been monitoring communications from other colonies. Since the attack, the response is ... unprecedented. She activated another display. This one showed message traffic between human settlements across the galaxy. Thousands of communications were flowing between planets, stations, and ships. The volume was 10 times higher than normal. What are they saying? Chang-ho asked. They are volunteering, sir. Every colony with a ship, every family with a transport, every mining crew with a cargo hauler. They all want to help rescue the children. Colonel Park from Luna Base looked confused, but most of those ships are not military vessels. They have no weapons, no armor, no training for combat. They are asking for weapons, Mira continued. Civilian captains are requesting military-grade lasers, missile pods, anything we can give them. They say they will figure out how to use them. Chang-ho felt something stir in his chest. It was not hope, exactly, but something stronger. Something that made his blood run hot and his hands steady. How many ships are we talking about? As of this morning, sir, over 15,000 vessels have volunteered for rescue operations. More are signing up every hour. The room erupted in surprised voices. 15,000 ships was 5 times the size of the official human fleet, but Chang-ho raised his hand for silence. He was thinking about something else entirely. Dr. Yu, he said, in your opinion, what do the Vorthok expect us to do? The xenobiologist considered the question carefully. Based on their transmission and their historical tactics, they expect us to negotiate. They believe that taking our children will make us desperate to avoid conflict. They probably think we will offer tribute, surrender our independence, anything, to get the children back safely, and if we refuse, they will likely make an example of some of the children to show they are serious. Then they will wait for us to reconsider. Zhang Ho nodded slowly. Around the table, he could see the other commanders reaching the same conclusion he had. The Vorthok were not just holding 37 children hostage. They were betting that human nature would make those children into chains that would bind all of humanity. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Here is what we are going to do, Zhang Ho said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had made an irrevocable decision. We are going to activate Protocol 7. Several people around the table gasped. Protocol 7 was the emergency mobilization plan that had been created after the Titan Wars, but never used. It authorized the military to recruit and arm civilian vessels in case of existential threat to human civilization. Sir, Minister Kim said carefully, Protocol 7 is for defending Earth from invasion. This is a rescue mission. No, replied, standing up from his chair. This is not a rescue mission, this is a war. The Vorthok Empire has declared war on humanity by taking our children. We are going to respond accordingly. He walked to the communications panel and activated the emergency broadcast system. His next words would be heard on every human world, every space station, every ship traveling between the stars. Citizens of Earth and all human colonies. This is Admiral Li Cheng-ho of the Terran Defense Council. Hostile aliens have attacked New Sol Colony and abducted 37 human children. They demand our surrender in exchange for the children's safety. He paused, letting that sink in across human space. We do not negotiate with kidnappers. We do not surrender to threats. We do not abandon our children. As of this moment, humanity is at war with the Vorthok Empire. Every available ship, every able-bodied citizen, every resource we possess will be dedicated to bringing our children home. Cheng Ho looked directly into the camera, knowing that parents across the galaxy would see his face and understand that he meant every word. To the Vorthok Empire, you have made a terrible mistake. You thought that taking our children would make us weak. Instead, you have given every human in the galaxy the same mission. We are coming for our kids. We are coming for you, and we will not stop until every one of those children is safely home. The transmission ended. Within minutes, the communication networks were flooded with responses. Ship captains reporting for duty. Colonies offering supplies and volunteers. Families sending their savings to fund the war effort. But the most important response came from the Vorthok themselves. Their next message was not the confident demand for surrender they had planned to send. Instead, it was a frantic transmission to their home fleet. The humans are not surrendering. They are mobilizing everything they have. Request immediate reinforcements. War leader Thorzek was about to discover that when you threaten human children, you do not get a defeated enemy begging for mercy. You get an entire species united in fury, and that was something the Vorthok Empire had never faced before. Captain Cho Sung-min stood on the bridge of the destroyer, Inchin's fury as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Vorthok territory. Around his ship, the largest human fleet in history materialized from the void. Military vessels, cargo ships, passenger liners, mining barges, and even luxury yachts appeared one by one, all bristling with hastily mounted weapons. Captain, his tactical officer Lieutenant Nam Jihai called out, I am reading over 8,000 ships in our formation. More are still arriving. Sung-min nodded grimly. In the 3 days since Admiral Cheng Ho's declaration of war, ships had been pouring in from every corner of human space. The official military fleet was only a small part of the armada. Most of the vessels were civilian craft whose owners had volunteered to help rescue the children. Any word from the scouting groups? Sung-min asked. Yes, sir. Commander Park's team found the Vorthok patrol fleet 2 hours ago. They are engaging now. On the main screen, a tactical display showed the battle happening deeper in enemy space. Dozens of red dots representing Vorthok ships were being surrounded by hundreds of blue dots representing human vessels. The numbers seemed impossible, but Sung-min had seen the volunteer lists himself. When word spread that the children had been taken, ordinary people had done extraordinary things. The captain of a luxury cruise ship had installed military laser cannons where the swimming pool used to be. A mining crew had turned their rock-cutting equipment into ship-to-ship weapons. Even the old freighter captains who normally carried grain and manufactured goods had found ways to mount missile launchers on their cargo holds. Captain, Jihai said, her voice troubled, we are getting reports from the forward scouts. The Vorthok forces are, confused. Confused how? They keep asking for reinforcements, sir. Their communications are talking about impossible human numbers and irrational attack patterns. It seems they have never fought an enemy like us before. Sung-min allowed himself a small smile. The Vorthok were used to conquering species that fought like they did, organized military forces following standard tactics. They were not prepared for thousands of angry parents who had no formal training but unlimited determination. Deep in Vorthok space, war leader Thorzak was discovering exactly what Jihai meant. His command ship, Bone Crusher, was surrounded by tactical displays showing the human advance, and nothing made sense. Report. Thorzak growled at his intelligence officer. War leader, the humans have deployed over 10,000 vessels. This is impossible. Our intelligence said they had fewer than 3,000 ships total. Then your intelligence was wrong. Thorzak snapped. What is their formation? The intelligence officer hesitated. They do not appear to have a formation, sir. They are attacking in small groups, but with no central coordination. Some of their ships are ramming our vessels instead of using weapons. Others are using industrial equipment as weapons. It is ... chaos. Thorzak studied the displays. His scaled face twisted in confusion. In his 3 centuries of military service, he had conquered dozens of species. They all followed predictable patterns. When their young were threatened, they became cautious and desperate. They offered tribute, they begged for mercy, they tried to negotiate. Humans were doing the opposite. They were attacking with everything they had, in ways that made no military sense. With a fury that seemed to grow stronger the longer the battle continued. What about the hostages? Thorzak asked. Are the humans worried about their young? We have broadcast warnings that resistance will result in harm to the children. Sir, the humans are ignoring our threats. This was wrong. This was all wrong. Thorzak had used this tactic successfully for over a century. Take the young, demand surrender, use the natural protective instincts of the parent species to ensure compliance. It always worked. War leader, his communications officer called out. We are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It is addressed to you personally. Put it through. The main screen flickered, and Thorzak found himself looking at a human face. It was scarred and weathered, with cold eyes that seemed to look right through him. The human wore the uniform of a military officer, but there was something else in his expression. Something that made Thorzak's blood run cold. I am Admiral Li Changho of the Terran Defense Force. The human said. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. I believe you have something that belongs to us. Thorzak activated his own transmission. Human Admiral, I am War Leader, Thorzak. You will order your forces to withdraw immediately, or the young of your species will suffer the consequences. Changho's expression did not change. The children are already suffering. You took them from their families. You scared them. You made their parents cry. The human leaned forward slightly. That was your first mistake. You are in no position to make demands. Thorzak replied. We have your young. We can destroy them at any time. No, Changho said quietly. You cannot. Because if you hurt even one of those children, every human in the galaxy will spend the rest of their lives hunting down every member of your species. We will not stop. We will not forgive. We will not forget. The transmission ended. Thorzak stared at the blank screen, trying to process what he had just heard. The human had not begged for mercy. He had not offered tribute. He had not even asked about the children's welfare. He had made a promise. War leader, his tactical officer, called out urgently. The human fleet is accelerating. They are moving toward our position at maximum speed. Thorzak looked at the display. The human ships were indeed approaching, but they were not following any recognizable attack pattern. Some were advancing in formation, others were spreading out to flank his forces, and still others were moving in seemingly random directions. What are they doing? He muttered. He got his answer 30 minutes later, when the first wave of human ships reached his outer defenses. A cargo vessel that should have been carrying grain somehow managed to ram through the shields of a cruiser. A passenger liner that normally carried tourists opened fire with weapons that looked like they had been bolted on during the trip. But the worst part was not the damage they were doing. It was the transmissions coming from the human ships. Instead of military communications, he was hearing something far more terrifying. This is the freighter Soul's Hope, came one voice. My daughter Minji is on that prison ship. We are coming for her. Mining vessel New Busan here, said another. They took my son Hyansu. Nobody takes my boy. Passenger liner Daegu pried to all ships. A third voice called out. I have 5 grandchildren in that fleet. We are not leaving. Without them, Thorzak realized with growing horror that he was not fighting a military force. He was fighting an entire species of parents, grandparents, teachers, and neighbors who had all been personally offended by his actions. On the transport ship, Soulrender, where the human children were being held, 12-year-old Park Soul was listening to the battle sounds echoing through the hull. She had spent the last 3 days studying the ship's layout, memorizing guard schedules, and talking quietly with the other children. Her friend, Kim Taemin, sat beside her, his face pale but determined. Do you think they will really come for us? He whispered. Soyoung listened to the distant sounds of weapons fire and explosions. She thought about her father, about all the parents back on New Seoul Colony, about the promise Admiral Changho had made. They are already here, she said softly. Can you hear that? That is the sound of every grown-up we have ever known, coming to take us home. Around them, the other children began to smile for the first time since their capture. They were still prisoners on an alien ship, but they were no longer alone. Outside, the battle raged on. and the Vorthok Empire was slowly beginning to understand that they had made the worst mistake in their history. They had threatened human children, now they were going to face the consequences. War leader Thorzak had ruled over a quarter of the galaxy for 2 centuries, but he had never experienced fear like this before. His command center was filled with the sounds of panicking officers, as reports poured in from across Vorthok space. War leader, his communications officer called out, his voice shaking. "We have lost contact with the 7th Fleet." "What do you mean lost contact?" Thorzak demanded. The humans surrounded them near the Proxima sector. "The last transmission we received was Admiral Vexstar requesting immediate evacuation." Then nothing. Thorzak's clawed hands gripped his command chair. The 7th Fleet had been 300 ships strong. How could the humans have destroyed such a force? "Sir," another officer reported, "the humans are not following standard warfare protocols. When our ships are disabled, they board them instead of destroying them. They are taking prisoners and interrogating them about the location of the children." This was madness. In Thorzak's experience, wars were fought for territory, resources, or political advantage. They followed rules. They were negotiations, ceasefires, acceptable losses. But the humans seemed to care about only one thing: finding their young. "What about our threats?" Thorzak asked. "Are they not concerned about the safety of their children?" His intelligence officer looked at his reports with confusion. "Sir, we have broadcast warnings that continued resistance will result in harm to the hostages. The humans have responded by attacking more aggressively." On the transport ship Solrender, Park Soyoung was putting the finishing touches on her plan. She had spent 4 days observing their captors, and she had learned something important. The Vorthok guards were confused and frightened. She had overheard them talking in their own language, and while she did not understand the words, she understood the tone. They were scared. They kept looking at the security monitors and talking in quick, nervous voices. "Taemin," she whispered to her friend, "how many guards are on this level?" Kim Taemin had been counting. 6 during the day shift, 4 at night. But they keep changing the numbers. Yesterday there were 8. Soyoung nodded. The aliens were getting more nervous as the battle continued. That was good. Nervous guards made mistakes. "Dobbin," she called softly to 8-year-old Lee Dobbin, who was small enough to crawl through the ship's ventilation system. "Did you find the communication room?" The little girl nodded eagerly. "It is 3 levels up, just like you said. But there are lots of wires and machines I do not understand." "You do not need to understand them," Soyoung replied. "You just need to connect this to that." She showed Dobbin a simple device she had built from pieces of broken electronics. "When the lights go out tonight, you crawl up there and plug this in. It will send a signal." 14-year-old Kim Taemin looked worried. "Soyoung, what if we get caught? What if they hurt us?" Soyoung met his eyes with a steady gaze. They already hurt us when they took us from our families. Now we hurt them back." Around the makeshift dormitory where the children were kept, 37 young humans were getting ready to show their captors what human children could do when they stopped being scared and started being angry. Back in the command center of the Bone Crusher, Thorzak was receiving reports that made no sense. Human ships were appearing everywhere, far beyond what their intelligence had suggested was possible. "Where are they all coming from?" he roared at his staff. "Sir," his intelligence officer said nervously, "we believe they are civilian vessels, cargo ships, passenger transports, even private yachts. The humans appear to have armed every ship they possess." "Impossible. No species would risk their entire civilian fleet for a few dozen young." "Sir, we have intercepted human communications. They are not treating this as a military operation. They are calling it a rescue mission. Every ship captain with children of their own has volunteered to help." Thorzak stared at the tactical display, showing thousands of human ships advancing through his territory. Each dot represented someone who had abandoned their normal life to join this impossible crusade. "Have any of our subject species ever behaved this way?" he asked. The intelligence officer checked his records. "No, sir. When we take their young, most species negotiate for their return. Some attempt small rescue operations. None have ever mobilized their entire civilization." A new alarm began sounding. Thorzak looked at the display to see more human ships arriving at the edge of the system. These were not military vessels or even converted civilian craft. They were clearly civilian ships that had been hastily armed with whatever weapons their crews could find. War leader, his tactical officer, reported, "The new arrivals are broadcasting a message. Put it through." The main screen showed the bridge of what looked like a passenger liner. The human speaking was an elderly woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but when she spoke, her voice was filled with steel. "I am Captain Song Yujin of the transport ship Busan. Morning," she said. "I have been carrying passengers between the colonies for 30 years. Today, I am carrying volunteers who want to help bring the children home." She paused, looking directly at the camera. "I have 6 grandchildren. If you harm any of those kids, I will personally hunt you down." The transmission ended. Similar messages began coming from other ships. Teachers who had armed school transports. Farmers who had mounted weapons on cargo haulers. Retirees who had taken their personal yachts and turned them into improvised warships. Thorzak felt something he had not experienced in decades. Not just fear, but the growing realization that he had made a catastrophic error in judgment. "Sir," his communications officer called out urgently. "We are receiving a transmission from the Soul Render. It appears to be coming from the human children." "That is impossible. The children are secured in the detention area." "Nevertheless, sir, the signal is definitely originating from their location." Thorzak had the transmission put through. What he heard made his blood run cold. "Hello," came a young voice, calm and clear. "My name is Park So-young. I am 12 years old, and I am speaking for all the human children on this ship." Thorzak looked around his command center. His officers were staring at the speakers in shock. "We know you can hear this," So-young continued. "We want you to know that we are not afraid of you anymore. We were scared when you first took us, but now we can hear our families coming to get us. They are very angry with you." The girl paused, and when she spoke again, there was something in her voice that made hardened Vorthok warriors step back from their consoles. "You should not have taken human children. You should have left us alone. Now, every grown-up in the galaxy is coming for you, and they will not stop until we are safe at home." The transmission ended, leaving Thorzak's command center in stunned silence. "War leader," his tactical officer whispered, "how did children manage to access our communications system?" Thorzak did not answer. He was staring at the tactical display, watching thousands of human ships closing in on his position, and finally, understanding the magnitude of his mistake. He had not just kidnapped 37 children, he had united an entire species in righteous fury, and now they were coming for him. The space around the transport ship Soul Render had become the largest battlefield in galactic history. Over 12,000 human vessels surrounded the Vorthok fleet, and more were arriving every hour. Captain Cho Seung-min watched from the bridge of Inshan's Fury as civilian ships moved into attack positions alongside military destroyers. "Captain," Lieutenant Nam Jihai reported. "Admiral Chang Ho is requesting all ship commanders join the tactical briefing." The main screen filled with dozens of faces. Military officers sat next to cargo ship captains, luxury yacht owners, and mining crew chiefs. Seung-min had never seen anything like it in his 20 years of service. Admiral Chang Ho appeared on the screen, his face grim but determined. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have located the ship carrying our children. The transport vessel Soul Render is at the center of the Vorthok defensive formation." A tactical display showed the enemy fleet. The alien ships were arranged in a protective sphere around the transport, with the heaviest warships forming the outer layer. "Sir," called out the captain of a converted passenger liner, "my ship is not built for combat. But if those kids are in there, I will ram right through their defenses." "As will I," added a freighter captain. "My daughter might be on that ship." Chang Ho held up his hand. "I understand your determination, but we need to be smart about this. The Vorthok are using the children as shields. They expect us to be cautious because we do not want to endanger the hostages." "What do you suggest, Admiral?" asked Captain Seung-min. "We are going to do something they will never expect," Chang Ho replied. "We are going to trust our children." The Soul Render So-young was making final preparations. She had divided the 37 children into 7 groups, each with a specific mission. The older kids would create distractions while the younger ones, led by 8-year-old Dobbin, disabled key ship systems. "Remember," So-young told them, "we are not trying to escape the ship. We are trying to help our families rescue us. When the attack begins, we make it impossible for the aliens to use this ship effectively." Taemin raised his hand. "What if they try to hurt us when they realize what we are doing?" So-young looked at her best friend with the same calm expression she had worn since the abduction. "Then we hurt them first." 12-year-old Wang Minho held up a device he had built from cleaning supplies and electronic components. "I tested this on the detention door. It works." 10-year-old Song Yujin, the youngest member of their group, had spent 2 days learning how to access the ship's computer system. "I can turn off the lights and gravity in any section of the ship," she said proudly. So-young nodded approvingly. The Vorthok thought they had captured helpless victims. They were about to learn that human children were not helpless at all. War leader Thorzak stood in his command center, watching the human fleet surround his forces. He had called for reinforcements from across the Empire, but even with additional ships, the humans still outnumbered him 3-1. "War leader," his communications officer said, "the humans are requesting to speak with you again. Put them through." Admiral Chang Ho appeared on the screen, but this time he was not alone. Beside him stood Commander Park Hyun-woo from New Seoul Colony. Thorzak, Chang Ho said, "I want you to meet Commander Park. His daughter is on your transport ship." Park stepped forward, and Thorzak saw something in the human's eyes that made him uncomfortable. It was not anger or fear. It was absolute certainty. "My daughter's name is So-young," Park said quietly. "She is 12 years old. She likes mathematics and building things. She is probably the smartest person I know." He paused, She is also probably planning something right now that will make your life very difficult. Thorzak laughed harshly. You think a child can threaten the Vorthok Empire? I think, Park replied, that you have never met a human child who has decided. You are her enemy. The transmission ended. Thorzak turned to his tactical officer. How long until our reinforcements arrive? 2 hours, war leader. Good. We will hold our position until then. The humans may have more ships, but they are mostly civilians. They cannot match our military discipline. He was wrong. The human attack began 30 minutes later, and it was unlike anything in Vorthok military history. Instead of organized battle formations, the humans attacked in waves of seemingly random groups. Cargo ships rammed into alien cruisers while passenger liners provided covering fire. Mining vessels used industrial cutting beams to slice through enemy hulls. But the strangest part was the communications chatter. Instead of military coordination, Thorzak heard personal messages being broadcast across the battlefield. This is for my son Jinho, called out one ship captain as his freighter crashed into a Vorthok destroyer. Nobody takes kids from the Kim family, shouted another as her passenger liner opened fire with improvised weapons. The Vorthok fleet, trained for conventional warfare, had no idea how to respond to an enemy that fought with pure parental fury. Instead of military tactics. In the middle of the chaos, the Soul Render suddenly went dark. Emergency lighting flickered on as the ship's main power systems failed. What is happening? Thorzak demanded. Sir, we are receiving reports from the transport ship. The human children have somehow accessed critical systems. They have disabled artificial gravity on 3 decks and cut power to the weapons array. Thorzak stared at his displays in disbelief. Children did this? Yes, sir, and there is more. They have locked the bridge crew out of the navigation system and activated the distress beacon. On the Soul Render, Soyoung floated in zero gravity. As she and her friends moved through the darkened corridors, Dabin had successfully disabled the gravity generators, while Yujin had shut down the main power grid from the computer access point. Phase 2, Soyoung called out to her teams. Minho, you and your group take the engine room. Taemin, get to the communication center and keep broadcasting our location. The Vorthok guards were struggling to move into zero gravity, but the children adapted quickly. They had all played low-gravity games in the colony's recreation center back home. Soyoung reached the ship's main corridor. She came face to face with a Vorthok officer twice her size. The alien pointed a weapon at her and spoke in broken human language. Stop this. Return to detention area now, or you will be punished. Soyoung looked up at the towering alien and smiled. It was not a nice smile. No, she said simply. You took us from our families. Now our families are coming to take us back, and there is nothing you can do to stop them. Behind her, 36 other human children emerged from the darkness, all looking at their captor with the same fearless determination. The Vorthok officer suddenly realized that he was not guarding helpless prisoners. He was trapped on a ship with the children of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And their parents were about to arrive. The battle for the Soul Render raged for 18 hours, but it was not really a battle. It was a rescue operation carried out by the largest volunteer force in galactic history. Ships from every human colony, every space station, every corner of human civilization had come together for one purpose: bringing their children home. Captain Sungmin watched from his bridge as a luxury yacht called Weekend Dream somehow managed to disable a Vorthok cruiser using modified recreational equipment. Near them, a cargo hauler filled with angry farmers was ramming through the alien defensive line. Captain, Jihai reported, we are receiving multiple distress calls from Vorthok ships. They are requesting permission to surrender. Su Min was not surprised. The alien military had been trained to fight other organized forces, not thousands of improvised warships operated by furious parents who had nothing to lose. What are Admiral Chang Ho's orders regarding prisoners? Accept all surrenders, but priority goes to anyone with information about additional human captives. On his command ship, war leader Thorzak was discovering that his centuries of military experience meant nothing against an enemy like this. His tactical officers were giving him reports that made no sense. Sir, the humans have broken through our defensive perimeter in 17 different locations. How is that possible? We have the stronger weapons, the better armor, the superior training. Yes, sir, but they have more ships than we calculated, and they are not fighting to win territory. They are fighting to reach the transport vessel. They do not seem to care about their own losses. Thorzak looked at the tactical display. He had lost over half his fleet, but the humans kept coming. For every ship he destroyed, 2 more took its place. War leader, his communications officer, called out urgently. We have lost contact with the Soul Render. The last transmission indicated that the human children had taken control of major ship systems. That is impossible. Sir, we also have incoming hyperspace signatures. It appears to be Vorthok reinforcements from the home fleet. Thorzak felt a moment of hope. With reinforcements, he might be able to turn this disaster around. His hope died when the new ships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately opened fire on his remaining vessels. "What are they doing?" he screamed. "Sir," his intelligence officer said in a shaking voice, "those are not reinforcements. Those are captured Vorthok ships being operated by human crews." The truth was even worse than Thorzak realized. The human advance through Vorthok space had been so swift and overwhelming that entire alien fleets had surrendered without fighting. The humans had then repaired the captured ships and used them to continue their push toward the children. On the Sol Render, So-young was leading her friends toward the ship's main hangar bay. They had spent the last 6 hours in complete control of the vessel, with the surviving Vorthok crew barricaded in a few secure areas. "So-young," Taman called out, "I can hear docking clamps engaging. I think someone is boarding us." So-young smiled for the first time since their capture. "That will be our ride home." The hangar bay doors opened, and human soldiers in full combat armor rushed in. Behind them came a figure that made So-young's heart leap. "Dad," she called out, running toward Commander Park Haeon-Woo. Dat Park caught his daughter in a fierce hug, holding her like he would never let her go again. Around them, other parents were reuniting with their children, tears of relief flowing freely. "Are you hurt?" Park asked, checking So-young for injuries. "We are fine, Dad. We took care of ourselves." She looked back at the other children, who were being embraced by rescue teams. "We showed them that human kids are not easy to kidnap." Admiral Chang-ho entered the hangar bay, surveying the scene of the reunion. He had seen many battles in his career, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of these 37 children who had refused to be victims. "Commander Park," he said, "your daughter and her friends have given us a complete tactical analysis of Vorthok ship design, guard rotations, and communication protocols. They have also disabled this vessel's weapons and navigation systems." Park looked at his daughter with pride and amazement. "So-young, how did you manage all that?" "We watched them, Dad. We learned how their ship worked. Then we used that knowledge against them." She paused. "Just like you taught me. When someone tries to hurt you, you do not just defend yourself. You make sure they cannot hurt anyone else." Chung-ho activated his communicator. "All ships, this is Admiral Chang-ho. The children are secure. Mission accomplished." The response came from thousands of vessels scattered across the battlefield. Cheers, tears, and expressions of relief filled the communication channels. But Chang-ho was not finished. "War Leader Thorzak," he said, opening a channel to the alien commander. "This is your final chance to surrender." Thorzak appeared on the screen, his face showing defeat and exhaustion. Behind him, his command center was in chaos. "Admiral Chang-ho, I am prepared to discuss terms of surrender." "There are no terms," Chang-ho replied coldly. "You will order all Vorthok forces to stand down immediately. You will provide us with the locations of any other human captives in your territory. You will turn yourself and your officers over to human authorities for trial. And if I refuse..." Chang-ho looked around the hangar bay at the children, who were safely back in their parents' arms. "Then we continue this war until every Vorthok ship in the galaxy is debris, and every Vorthok world is under human occupation. Your choice." Thorzak looked at his tactical display one last time. His empire's military forces were scattered and broken. Human fleets were advancing on a dozen different fronts. The species he had thought would be easy victims had instead become the most dangerous enemy the Vorthok had ever faced. "I surrender," he said quietly, as the formal surrender was being negotiated. So-young stood with her father on the observation deck of a human rescue ship, watching the Vorthok fleet power down their weapons. "Dad," she said, "will this war really be over now?" Park considered the question carefully. "The fighting will stop, but the consequences will last much longer. The Vorthok Empire is finished. Other species across the galaxy have seen what happens when you threaten human children." "Good," So-young said firmly. "Maybe now nobody else will be stupid enough to try it." Park smiled at his daughter's matter-of-fact assessment. She was right, of course. The Vorthok had learned too late that when you threaten human children, you do not get a defeated enemy, you get an entire species that will tear apart the galaxy to bring their kids home. And that was a lesson the rest of the universe would not soon forget. 6 months after the rescue of the new Soul children, Park So-young stood before the Galactic Council on the space station, Harmony Prime. She wore a simple blue dress and carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced the worst the galaxy could offer and emerged unbroken. "The Galactic Council recognizes Park So-young of the human colony, New Sol," announced Council Speaker Veltar, a tall alien from the peaceful Centauri Republic. "You have been awarded the Star of Courage, the highest civilian honor this body can bestow." So-young accepted the medal with a small bow. "Thank you, Council Speaker. I accept this not just for myself, but for all 37 children who were taken that day." In the audience, her father, Commander Park Hyun-woo, watched with pride as his daughter addressed the most powerful political body in the galaxy. Beside him sat Admiral Lee Ung-ho, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Space Forces. The ceremony was being broadcast across hundreds of worlds. But Songyang was not thinking about the millions of beings watching her. She was thinking about the message she needed to deliver. "I want to talk about what happened to us," she said, her young voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "Not just the rescue, but what we learned while we were prisoners." The council chamber fell silent. Representatives from dozens of species leaned forward to hear what the human child had to say. The Vorthok thought we would be helpless because we were young. They thought our families would surrender because they loved us. They were wrong about both things. Soyoung looked directly at the camera that was broadcasting her words across the galaxy. "We were not helpless. We studied our captors, learned their weaknesses, and used our knowledge to help our rescue. And our families did not surrender. They came for us with everything they had." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I have a message for anyone who might be thinking about threatening human children in the future. We are not victims. We are the future of a species that has never been conquered. Touch us, and you will face the fury of every human who has ever loved a child." The applause that followed was not polite, diplomatic clapping. It was thunderous approval that lasted for several minutes. After the ceremony, Soyoung found herself in a private meeting room with Council Speaker Veltar and several other senior representatives. "Young Soyoung," Veltar said, "there is a question the Council must ask. The human response to the Vorthok aggression was unprecedented. Are we to understand that any threat to human children will result in total war?" Soyoung considered the question seriously. At 13 years old, she had become an unofficial spokesperson for human determination. "Council Speaker, humans are generally peaceful. We prefer to trade, explore, and learn. But we have one absolute rule: nobody hurts our kids." She met the alien's eyes steadily. "If you respect that rule, humans will be your best friends. Break that rule, and you will discover why we have survived on a dangerous world for millions of years." Meanwhile, in the ruins of what had once been the Vorthok Empire, former war leader Thorzak sat in a human prison cell reading reports about the collapse of his civilization. The empire that had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for centuries had fallen in less than 6 months, but it had not fallen to human conquest. It had fallen because other enslaved species had seen what happened when someone threatened human children, and they had risen in rebellion. The Vorthok military, already broken by their war with humanity, could not handle simultaneous uprisings on dozens of worlds. A human guard brought him his daily meal. "Any news from the War Crimes Tribunal?" Thorzak asked. "They have finished reviewing your case," the guard replied. "Life imprisonment, but you will be allowed to live. The human children you kidnapped asked the court to spare your life." Thorzak looked up in surprise. "Why would they do that?" The girl Soyoung said that killing you would not bring back the children from other species that your empire destroyed over the years. She said you should live long enough to understand what you did wrong. That evening, in the rebuilt colony of New Seoul, Soyoung sat with her friends in the same playground where they had been captured. The dome had been repaired and strengthened, and new defensive systems protected the colony from future attacks. "Do you ever have nightmares about it?" asked Kim Taemin, now 15 and taller than Soyoung. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but not about being scared. I dream about all the other children from other species who were not as lucky as we were." 8-year-old Lee Dobbin, now 9 and still the smallest of their group, looked up from the electronic device she was building. "Is that why you want to join the Space Academy?" Soyoung nodded. "The galaxy is full of species that prey on the weak, but it is also full of people who need protection. I want to make sure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else." Her friends understood. They had all been changed by their experience, not broken, but strengthened. Several of them were planning careers in the military, space exploration, or diplomatic service. As the twin suns set over New Seoul Colony, received a message on her communicator. It was from Admiral Chang Ho, now commanding the largest peacekeeping force in galactic history. "Soyoung, I wanted you to know that we have received formal applications from over 40 species, requesting to join the Human Protection Alliance. They want our help defending their colonies from aggressors." Soyoung smiled as she read the message. The Vorthok had intended to make humanity submit by taking their children. Instead, they had created something new in the galaxy, a species that other civilizations looked to for protection. She composed her reply. "Admiral, tell them we accept, but make sure they understand our one rule." "What rule is that?" came Chang Ho's response. "Nobody hurts the kids. Ever." 3 years later, the rule had become known throughout the galaxy as the Human Doctrine. It was simple, clear, and absolute. Any species that threatened children, whether human or alien, would face the combined wrath of the Human Protection Alliance. The galaxy had become a safer place for the young of all species, because one group of human children had refused to be victims, and their families had refused to abandon them. Thorzak had been right about one thing: taking the children had indeed changed the balance of power in the galaxy. He had just been completely wrong about which way the balance would shift in his prison cell. As he read reports about the continued expansion of human influence and the unprecedented peace that had followed, Thorzak finally understood the magnitude of his error. he had tried to break humanity by threatening their most precious treasure. Instead, he had taught the galaxy what happened when you made that mistake, and that lesson would endure long after his empire was forgotten. The children of New Sol Colony continued to play in their rebuilt playground, unaware that their courage had fundamentally changed the course of galactic civilization. They were, after all, just kids, but they were human kids, and that had made all the difference.